Okay, so let's get started. Welcome to the Health Innovation Community Partnership. Just a reminder, today we do not have Heather Hayes on the call. So Sophia and I will be leading the call, and thank you all so much for participating with us every month. We are in our September meeting of the Health Innovation Community Partnership, and today's agenda promises to be very informative and engaging. So I'm gonna give it back to Sophia to go over our Zoom tips and guiding principles, and then we will move into getting started. We're at over 50, Sophia, so I think we're good to start.
Wonderful. As Rosa said, thank you so much for joining us this morning. I will be going over some tips for all of our attendees in this call, so please take note of the following. So this meeting is being recorded and will be posted to the HICPLA website in the future. All attendees, we ask that you please mute yourselves upon entering the call, unless you otherwise, if you are speaking, but please remain muted. Turn your audio and video on or off by clicking the microphone and camera buttons at the bottom of your screen. You will see those in green and gray. Next, if you do have a question, please click the raise hand button, and this will allow us to see who is in the queue for questions. But if you would prefer to write a question in the chat, we encourage you to do so. As well, we also offer interpretation. This feature is located on the same area of the bottom bar of your screen. It will be a small globe that you can find, and it will allow you to select your language of choice. Here is our agenda for the day, but as Rosa said, it will be an informative call from our partners and community stakeholders, and I will go over the principles, the guiding principles for our call. So we ask that all participants agree to basic principles prioritizing equity, community, resilience, and health in all programs and projects. All participants agree to approach issues with an open mind, be willing to engage in dialogue, and commit to thinking boldly about solutions. Participants will state views and ask genuine questions. Participants will seek to avoid monologues and arguments, move to conversations where participants are curious and seek to understand various points of view. Participants will explain reasoning and intent and share how we reach our conclusions so that others can understand our divergent reasoning. Participants will attack the problem and not the person, organization, or institution. Participants will define key terms so that we can attain a shared understanding. Participants will share all relevant information. Participants will always arrive prepared for the meeting. And during meetings, only one person speaks at a time. We will not engage in sidebar conversations. Thank you. And with that all, I will go ahead and pass the mic to Rosa Soto. Thank you.
Thank you, Sophia. So thank you everyone again for being here. We will start, as we always do, with the CEO of LAC USC Medical Center, Jorge Orozco. Jorge, are you ready?
Ready. Good morning, everyone. It really is a pleasure to speak to all of you in this very important group. It's important to us because, our hospital only exists to provide service to our community, and it's really an honor for us to do so. And this group really represents the voices of our community and the different interests. So always a pleasure. Next slide. As we get to the next slide, just a few quick updates. COVID is still spreading in our community. The good news is that the burden of disease from the infections of COVID are much, much lower than they've ever been. So the majority of our patients who come to our emergency room with COVID symptoms are sent home and are safely sent home. We have very, very few, if any, patients who are admitted because of COVID. Many patients are admitted with positive COVID tests because we test everyone. but they are in our hospital for a different reason. Whether it's a trauma related or another illness related reason, they are not there for COVID. So that's really, really good news. The case counts are dropping. So we are glad to report that that burden is very, very low. The other thing we are watching is monkeypox. Monkeypox is something that is spreading in California. We have had 1, maybe 2 admissions to the hospital because of monkeypox. But the good news is those case counts are also decreasing out in the community. But we are certainly very vigilant about monkeypox. We do offer the vaccine to our own patients, whether they're inpatients or outpatients. If you are a general community member, the Department of Public Health has vaccine sites that offer the vaccine. So let's see, next slide, please. I'm very happy to announce that after about a 1.5-year process, the Department of Health Services Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, and Anti-Racism Initiative has developed a strategic plan. This has been a very unique process for the county in that it involved the voices of our patients, the voices of our frontline staff, really voices that have traditionally been excluded, were very much in the driver's seat in the development of the strategic plan. And this strategic plan was presented to Department of Health Services and has some amazing recommendations. Right now, the department is looking at each of the recommendations and will develop tactics to address each of those. And there will be much more detail in that. So if you're interested in reviewing this plan, there is a link, I believe, that you can click on and you can get the PDF of this plan. Next slide, please. One big initiative that since I arrived here at LAC USC has been very important for us to address, and that is our name and our brand of our hospital. One of the primary reasons this is so important to us is it is confusing. The majority of our patients do not know this hospital as LAC plus USC Medical Center. We are known in the community by many other names. El Hospital General, County, so forth. And so this year we hired consultants to help us in rebranding our hospital and our medical center name. And earlier this year, we conducted extensive research to gauge the attitudes and insights of stakeholders when it comes to our role as LAC USC and our reputation in the community. And this research was extensive. It consisted of more than 2,000 quantitative surveys and 48 participant hours of qualitative focus groups. And so I wanted to share some of the insights that we gained through that process with all of you. Again, we engaged patients in English and Spanish, staff, general community in English and Spanish. And we hired a research group to do polling that was random, that was supposed to get us to a representative sample of the attitudes and perspectives of our community. Next slide, please. So here are some of the findings. And 3 clear themes emerge. LACU USC Medical Center has an overwhelming reputation as an emergency trauma center. That's how we're known. We're not necessarily known by the hundreds of specialties that we offer, the primary care services that we offer. Our medical center is really a comprehensive center, but really we are known for our trauma services. LAC USC Medical Center is known as a good community partner that provides bilingual care to patients regardless of income or means. So this perspective by the community is really supports the notion that LAC USC is here for those with limited resources, that we provide those services. And then finally, the other theme that emerged is that there's no consistent name recognition, and that there's a high degree of confusion about the current name across employees, residents, and patients. And you all may ask yourself, how do you describe your, how do you describe this hospital? What name do you use when you refer to it? When your friends refer to it, when your family members refer to it. And this name confusion is real, is very real. The other day I was walking into the hospital and I ran across a gentleman who had an appointment, and he was talking to our security guards, and he showed them a piece of paper, and the piece of paper clearly said Keck USC Medical Center, and he was in our campus, and so his appointment was across the street. Another example, there was a helicopter crash on the helipad of the hospital, and we received a call from USC saying, hey, what's going on with the helicopter crash in your hospital? And we were able to say that actually that helicopter crash happened in Keck's side of the hospital. I have a small video that I want to share with you that really illustrates how confusing our name has been in the past. And I don't know, Rosa, if you can.
He was rushed to USC Medical Center, where
I'm at USC Medical Center, and we
Reporting at USC Medical Center, I'm
hospitalized at USC Medical Center.
at USC Medical Center in Boyle.
At the USC Medical Center.
He was taken to USC Medical Center.
So as you can see, we are often referred to as USC Medical Center. Just so that you know, our relationship with USC is contractual. We provide them funds to hire physicians to be and supervise our residents in our hospital. So we pay them every year about $170 million to be part of our hospital. So we are not a USC affiliate. We are an affiliated hospital, but we are not run by USC Medical Center. Can we go back to the slides? Let's see.
One moment. Next slide.
Next slide, please.
Got it.
Other findings is that, our reputation is good. When community members were asked to rank their preferences for basic services, the top 3 that came out were Kaiser, Cedars, and LAC USC. And the spread is not that far apart. Also, if they were asked to rank the highest quality care, the 3 hospitals that emerged were Cedars, UCLA, and LAC USC. And as you can see, there is a 3% difference from the top ranked hospital to LAC USC. So this really reveals that we have an opportunity. We have an opportunity to reposition the hospital and its brand, and really reflect the world-class care that it delivers. Next. So the next steps. We believe that the health goes well beyond the hospital visit, and we believe providing exceptional care to our community and our patients is really part of our core mission. And so we are going to be considering different names to rebrand the hospital. And some of the questions that we would like some help with is, how should we proceed when we have selected a new name and a new brand? How do we engage the community in making sure that that brand is recognized, that that brand is accepted? And where do you see other opportunities for us to continue to demonstrate, this commitment to excellence? And how do we get closer to meeting community needs? Because ultimately our name and our brand needs to be reflective of what the needs of our community. With that, I'd like to open it up to any questions, thoughts, comments.
Thank you, Jorge, for that comprehensive overview of the commitment to equity and the commitment to our community. And does anyone have any questions for Jorge?
I'll chime in. Thank you for that information. Hi. It's really surprising to see the media, who are professionals, say the name wrong, in that little video. So probably some sort of a media guide, education, direct communication with the folks who write the scripts for the news anchors, to make sure that they say the name correctly, whatever it may be.
Right. No, absolutely, great point. And that should be a target of the rollout, absolutely.
I wonder if people don't know what the LAC means in the name, they just skip it because they don't know it.
Most people do not. LA County is basically what it is.
Yeah, great insight. Thank you. And in the chat, we have a question. Where can we provide our thoughts about rebranding?
I'm happy to be the recipient of any thoughts, any ideas, any perspectives that you may have, and we can integrate that with our rebranding team, that input into our rebranding team's work. So you all should have my email. If not, Rosa, if you could send that out to the group.
I'll place it in the chat. Any other thoughts or comments for Jorge before we go to our next speaker?
I just wanted to share how excited I am that you've gotten to a really good place with the diversity, equity, and inclusion document. It'll be great to see how that is unpacked. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, we are excited. This really represents a different direction in elevating the voices of those who have been excluded from any sort of power structures. So we're excited.
All right, well, with that, we say thank you so much to Jorge Orozco and LAC USC administration for always being available for these Health Innovation Community Partnership meetings and participating as a partner. let's go on to our next speaker. And our next speaker is Dr. Luisa Gonzalez. She is with LA County Department of Public Health, and she will be giving us a public health update, a little more in depth than we heard from Jorge. Luisa?
Hi, good morning, Rosa, and good morning to everyone. As Rosa mentioned, my name is Dr. Luisa Gonzalez, and I'm very happy to be here with you to share some information from LA County Department of Public Health about what you need to know about monkeypox, and then a brief update about the bivalent boosters for COVID. Next slide, please. And next slide. I do want to just note that as with COVID, information is frequently changing and being updated. So some of the numbers that are in here, unless I state otherwise, are current as of the 1st of this month. But you can always, for the most up-to-date information about monkeypox, visit our monkeypox web pages, and we have links on this presentation slide for you to check out. Next slide. So today I'm going to cover several areas, as I mentioned, specifically related to monkeypox. I'll just go over some general monkeypox information. We'll also discuss transmission, signs and symptoms, including some photos that I'll share with you, isolation and safety considerations, exposure and monitoring. We'll talk about the vaccines and treatment, and I'll leave you with some additional resources that you can peruse at your leisure afterwards. Next slide, please. So first of all, what is monkeypox? Well, monkeypox is, as we all know, historically a very rare zoonotic disease caused by a monkeypox virus, which is an orthopox virus. It was actually identified first in 1958 when there were a couple of outbreaks of pox-like disease in colonies of monkeys that were kept for research. The first human case was actually recorded in 1970. Really, it's rarely seen here in the United States or in countries outside of Central and Western Africa, at least up until May of this year. There's actually two types of MPX or MPOX viruses. The strain that we have here in the United States is actually a less severe version of it. The virus is actually part of the same genus of viruses as the variola virus, which is the virus that causes smallpox. Monkeypox symptoms are very similar to smallpox symptoms, but they are much more mild. And monkeypox is rarely fatal. Monkeypox is not related to chickenpox. I want to make that very clear. And also, despite being named monkeypox, the source of this disease to date has not actually been identified. The current circulating strain of monkeypox has been up until now really limited to the West African clade, which tends to generally cause milder disease. Next slide, please. So the WHO has described this as a multi-country monkeypox outbreak in non-endemic countries. And they made that designation on May 21st of this year. Next slide, please. So some data. To date, there have been 20,733 total confirmed monkeypox or orthopox cases in the United States. That particular figure is current as of August 22nd per the CDC. In LA County, so far, at least as of 2 days ago, we have a total of 1,746 cases. What I want to really call your attention to is the bar chart on this slide, which is really interesting. It shows that number of new cases having a decreasing trend. We're not really sure yet as this is a true trend or if it's just a fragment of delayed reporting secondary to the holiday weekend that we just had. So we do need to wait and see if this trend holds true over time, but it is an interesting and hopeful trend to be able to see at this point. Next slide. So who can get monkeypox? So anyone can get monkeypox. I know there's some folks that are saying that this is possibly an STD. It is not, because it's not strictly spread through sexual contact. And everyone, it's not just the cases that are most demographically in which it's circulating at this time, actually anyone can get it. So currently, most cases have been among people who self-identify as gay, bisexual, or men who have sex with men. But again, it's not exclusively in those populations, and anyone, I repeat, can get monkeypox. Regardless of the gender identity or sexual orientation, anyone who has been in close contact with someone with monkeypox can acquire and spread it. Next slide, please. So we know as far as transmission goes that it spreads by close or intimate or prolonged contact with someone that has monkeypox virus. Direct skin-to-skin contact with a monkeypox rash, scabs, or sores, either during sex or other intimate contact like kissing, massaging, cuddling, etc., is required. You can also possibly get contact with respiratory secretions if that happens over a very prolonged period during very close face-to-face contact or intimate physical contact, as well as contact with objects or fabrics like bed sheets, etc., or clothing that have been used by someone with monkeypox and haven't yet been cleaned. So they're still unwashed. Articles like clothing, bedding, sharing towels even can potentially transmit it. Pregnant persons that have monkeypox can spread the virus to their fetus through the placenta, and monkeypox can spread to others from the time that their symptoms start until the rash has completely healed, the scabs have fallen off, and there's a brand new layer of fresh skin that is formed. And that usually takes between 2 to 4 weeks. So again, respiratory secretions can also be an issue if someone is living or caring for someone in their home that has monkeypox. So masking is still always something that we like to recommend, which also helps with COVID, which, as Jorge mentioned, is still spreading. Next slide, please. So what are the signs and symptoms of monkeypox? So symptoms usually start anywhere between 5 and 21 days after a person's been exposed. The most common symptom is a rash, and the rash can, I'll show some photos in the next slide, can look like a whole lot of different visual sort of from a pimple to other more serious looking skin eruptions, I'll call them. But people may also develop flu-like symptoms. Most people have very mild disease and they recover within 2 to 4 weeks without any treatment. Anyone who's suspected to have monkeypox really should be evaluated by a healthcare provider, who then will determine if the person actually needs to be tested. But if there are people who do not have a regular healthcare provider, they can always call our DPH call center. As Jorge mentioned, we do have services that we provide to individuals who don't otherwise have a source of care. They can call us at 833-540-0473. Which is open 7 days a week from 8 a.m. to 8:30 p.m. Or you can also visit any one of our public health sexual health clinics. So, so far in the US outbreaks, some notable features of infected people, again, have developed a rash. The rash has often been mucosal, meaning in the oral mucosa, genital or the perianal areas. The lesions have at times been scattered or localized to a body site specifically, rather than being all over or diffuse. The lesions have sometimes been in different stages of progression, so the lesions do change over time. And not all of the people have had a classic prodromal symptoms, meaning all of these formerly mentioned symptoms. Not everyone has those. Presenting symptoms include anorectal pain, tenesmus, and rectal bleeding associated with the perianal lesions and proctitis. So next slide, please. So the classic presentation of monkeypox infection does include, like I said, a flu-like illness lasting a few days, followed by the appearance of this characteristic rash. The presenting symptoms can include fever, chills, this distinctive rash, which can look like any of these things, or new lymphadenopathy or swelling of the lymph nodes. The appearance of the rash typically evolves very quickly and sequentially from macules, which are lesions with a flat base, to papules, which are slightly raised, firm lesions, to vesicles, which are lesions that are filled with a clear fluid, and finally progressing to pustules, which are lesions that are filled with a yellowish fluid. And then eventually they crust, which they then dry up and fall off, and new skin is formed underneath that. Next slide, please. So isolation. So if someone is diagnosed with monkeypox, they must isolate until they have no fever for 72 hours without the use of any fever reducing medications. And they also must have no respiratory symptoms. So no sore throat, nasal congestion, or cough, or at least that they have those symptoms, if they do have it, have improved. And they have to have no new lesions, skin lesions in the previous 48 hours. And finally, all the lesions that they do have healed. The scabs have fallen off, and there's a fresh layer of skin that is formed, including any lesions in the mouth. Next slide, please. So considerations during isolation include that the isolation spaces should have doors that can be closed, and also, when possible, obviously, the house will have a dedicated bathroom for the use of the infected person. If a dedicated bathroom isn't possible, then we do request that people ensure a thorough cleaning following the manufacturer's recommendations with any EPA-approved disinfectant after each use by someone with the virus. Multiple people with monkeypox can share one isolation space, but they should be discouraged from skin-to-skin contact with each other. They should stay in the isolation space as much as possible during their isolation period, but if they do need to leave for some reason, they should wear a very well-fitting mask and cover up all of their skin lesions. That can mean just wearing, pants and a long sleeve shirt. Next slide, please. So soap and water or hand sanitizer that is at least 60% alcohol based should be available to folks at all times. Only staff essential to operations that are wearing personal protective equipment or PPE should enter these isolation areas. So the PPE, as we all know, include things like gowns, gloves, eye protection, NIOSH-approved particulate respirators like N95s, filters, or higher. Handing dirty laundry or cleaning or disinfecting individuals that are working in that area should definitely wear gowns, gloves, eye protection, and well-fitting respirator or a mask. Excuse me. They should also avoid activities that could resuspend any dried material from lesions. So like portable fans should be turned off, no dry dusting, no sweeping, no vacuuming in these areas, because those could spread any dried up viral particles back into the air. Instead, we recommend wet cleaning methods so that they can suspend in the liquid whatever virus gets cleaned up and does not aerosolize into the air. They should never shake any soiled laundry or handle it in any manner that could disperse or shake off any of the infectious material. And again, just a reminder to use EPA registered disinfectants with an emerging viral pathogens claim. And you can find that on the Environmental Protection Agency's lists, which is, I don't see the hyperlink on the actual slide, but we can provide that. Did that, and as well as the other hyperlinks if you're not able to access them from this slide presentation. Next slide, please. So exposure. So individuals who have been exposed to someone with confirmed monkeypox should monitor their health for 21 days after they were exposed. It's not a quarantine. If they don't have any symptoms, they can continue their daily activities. That is permitted. They should get vaccinated soon after their exposure, however, if they're eligible, and ideally within 4 days, but they can wait up to 14 days. Maybe they don't find out right away. Maybe they find out, somebody a week and a half ago that they were exposed to turned positive. Up to 14 days is still okay to go ahead and seek your vaccine if you were exposed. Next slide, please. So the monkeypox vaccine is the Jynneos brand. It's both the smallpox vaccine and the same vaccine is used for monkeypox to prevent the disease in persons that are at risk for infection because they were exposed. It's a series of 2 doses that are given 28 days apart. Again, ideally, it should be started within 4 days of the exposure to prevent the disease. But again, it can still reduce the severity of the disease if it's given up to 14 days after exposure. Next slide, please. Oh, actually, I just wanted to mention too that it's a live weakened non-replicating orthopox virus. So it does contain modified vaccinia, but it does not have the actual, so actually, that's all I want to say about that. So it is a live, but weakened version of the virus. Next slide. Excuse me. So Gayer, as far as who's eligible for the vaccine, because I know everyone has been asking. So at this point, it's gay or bisexual men and transgender persons who had multiple or anonymous sex partners in the last 14 days, or who had skin to skin or intimate contact, meaning like kissing and hugging with persons at large venues or events in the past 2 weeks. Persons of any gender or sexual orientation who do engage in commercial or transactional sex in the past 14 days, meaning sex in exchange for money or in exchange for shelter or food or other goods or needs, are also eligible. Those individuals, if any individuals who are immunocompromised, including those who have advanced or uncontrolled HIV, may be at high risk for severe disease. And those are the folks that are being prioritized, at least while we have some limitations on the quantity of the vaccine. Gay or bisexual men or transgender persons who had gonorrhea or early syphilis in the past year, or who are on HIV PrEP treatment, or who had anonymous sex or sex with multiple partners in the past 21 days in a commercial sex venue or another venue, are also eligible, as are persons experiencing homelessness who have engaged in high-risk behaviors. Individuals with monkeypox symptoms or those who are under isolation for monkeypox should not get vaccinated. Next slide, please. So as far as treatment goes, most individuals do have mild illness, as I mentioned earlier, and they recover even without treatment over the course of about 2 to 4 weeks. Tecovirimat or TPOXX is an antiviral FDA-approved vaccine for smallpox, and it can be used for monkeypox. Currently, there's no specific treatment, but there are antivirals that could be beneficial in some cases. The lesions or the pain that interfere with activities of daily living in patients at high risk for severe disease include young children, pregnant individuals, women, breastfeeding women, individuals who are immunosuppressed, or those who have a history of atopic dermatitis or eczema. You should always speak with the provider regarding your treatment options. Again, it's particularly important to try to avoid close, prolonged contact with young children and people who are pregnant or breastfeeding or immunocompromised, or people who have a history of these skin diseases, dermatitis or eczema, again, because they may be at higher risk of serious illness. Next slide, please. So a few resources that I'll share with you regarding monkeypox. We have some information on our website that is specific guidance for shelters, so they can look and talk about, or they can read and share with their staff how they should be communicating with volunteers, with residents, etc. Next slide, please. The California Department of Public Health has also sent out a letter. The hyperlink is at the very top here, for those who want to access that so that they can read what the California Public Health Department has issued so far. Next slide. There is also a hyperlink here from the CDC that talks about considerations for reducing monkeypox transmission when these occur in congregate living settings. So that can include even, for example, folks that not just shelters for people experiencing homelessness, but even senior homes or senior centers where there are high-risk individuals that are potentially going to have a more severe version of the disease should they get infected. And next slide. So again, if you would like more information, you can always dial 211, which is available 24/7. I mentioned you can go to our website. We have a lot of information there. We also have an email that's for the public to use, phinfo@publichealth or at ph.lacounty.gov. And you can follow us on any of our social media. Our handles are here at LA Public Health. And next slide. Actually, so the next slide I think is just for questions, but what I wanted to share now is about COVID vaccines for all. So the bivalent vaccine as it's known. So everyone is eligible for the vaccine 2 months after completion of their primary series or their last booster dose. So Pfizer is approved for individuals 12 and up, and the Moderna version of the bivalent vaccine is for people who are 18 years and older. These are currently the only 2 bivalent boosters that are approved. They are currently available at most major pharmacies. You could access locations where you can go to find out whether or not the location that's close to you or that you're interested in going to actually has it in stock. You can go to vacunatelosangeles.com, or you can go to vaccinatelacounty.com. There you'll go to, how to get vaccinated. And once you're there on that page, you can enter your zip code. And then I recommend you check the box. It's a yellow box that says, check this box to find a location offering the updated boosters for people ages 12 and older. So there's an actual box, a little that you can check. And that way, when you click the search button, it will come up with locations that offer this bivalent booster vaccine, either Moderna or Pfizer, but we do still recommend that you call ahead of time to make sure that they have it in stock at the time that they haven't already run out. So again, most major pharmacies do have it available. We also have it available at all of our public health centers and our public health pods or point of dispensing locations. And so do recommend that individuals who qualify definitely go and get this version of this COVID vaccine, which targets the BA4 and BA5, as well as all of the previous strains. So that's it for me. If there's time, I'm happy to take questions.
We do have a number of questions in the chat. We're running a little behind schedule, but maybe one question. There seems to be a disproportionate number of cases identified among gay, bisexual, and men having sex with men, Latinos. So is there special outreach and public education efforts targeted to this group? And I think that probably is true for COVID, that it is more prominent among Latino populations. So
That's right.
answer to both of those.
Yes, Rosa, that's a really good observation. Thank you for raising that. So yes, we do see that actually African-American and Latino men are the ones that have the highest rates of monkeypox virus among men who have sex with men, or those who are in that gay, bisexual, MSM community. Within that community, over 30% are Latinos and over 30% are African-American among the confirmed positive cases. So yes, it is in LA County disproportionately impacting those 2 ethnic communities. Excuse me, we do have a lot of our public health resources going into addressing those specific ethnic communities to try and make sure that they have access to information in language, as well as both written, as well as the opportunities to call us if they have any questions or concerns, and be able to access someone in language that can provide them with the appropriate guidance. But to the degree that anyone here can help us spread the word, we would also be very grateful to have those populations be extra careful. And perhaps when we looked at that slide that I showed earlier with the bar chart that showed the decreasing trend of cases, again, we're not sure to what degree that is artifact from a lag of reporting of cases from the long weekend, or whether that's a reflection of having individuals actually start to either access the vaccine or to modify their behavior, engaging in less risky behaviors that would then put them at higher risk. So, time will tell, but we're hopeful that maybe the word is actually getting out to these populations so that they can prevent themselves from becoming exposed and infected.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gonzalez, and thank you to the Department of Public Health for your partnership with our communities, particularly our most vulnerable communities. Thank you for presenting today.
Thank you for having me.
All right. We are now moving on to our next presentation, and I'm going to call up Iris Rain, who is with LA County Department of Arts and Culture. She is here with artist Patrick Martinez. And we're really, really excited to hear about Patrick's incredible work. You all might remember that Patrick's art is one of the murals in the Restorative Care Village. And so without further ado, Iris, are you on?
Yes. Can you hear me?
I love that background.
Hey, by the way, if anybody wants to go to the Department of Arts and Culture website, there are all sorts of free backgrounds that are taken from county artworks. So all sorts of great virtual backgrounds, and they're pre-formatted and easy to attach. Well, it's with great pleasure that I introduce Patrick Martinez. I wanted to, each time we bring on an artist, I'm thinking about what the meaning of their work is in sort of in a larger sense and in the specific LAC-USC context. And one thing I wanted to note with Patrick is that I've always been kind of in awe and also touched by his ability to work on issues that are large and societal, but in a way where they are small and personal, and not just in the content of his work, but also in the way he works, which I'm hoping he's going to address today, so that they're really able to touch people in their hearts, and also that he has sort of an uncanny ability to talk about complex issues, but in a way where his artwork also presents as very beautiful, so that people can also sort of access challenging conversations through beauty. And anyway, so it's with great pleasure that I introduce Patrick Martinez. And Patrick, take it away.
Thank you for that intro. That's really sweet. Thank you for the kind words. I guess like with this presentation, we're just going to kind of go through what I was thinking with the mural, and also like the way that I'm working in my personal work and how it relates to public work. And, there's so many connections, but it was definitely for me something that I kind of went into knowing that I wanted to be almost like some type of, I don't know, like messenger, a visual messenger for the community, or try to be that. So that's kind of like my mindset when I'm doing work in my studio. Obviously I can make work and, I don't have to have any meetings about it. I just kind of produce it and kind of go back and forth with it. And, if I feel good about it, I kind of, present it in some type of context. Do we have the slides by chance? Okay. So originally, the way I approached the project, Iris had mentioned that, we first started talking about the project and the fact that the community will be involved. And this happened right before COVID, right? So COVID wasn't hitting us yet, and we weren't having to. Straight. There's like. Sorry about that. We weren't having to like lock down and kind of shelter in place yet. So we were having meetings with the community for this mural. And one of the things that I started thinking about were the peoples before, the Tongva, like the native indigenous peoples here in Los Angeles before, anyone else was here, kind of the Tongva tribes and things like that. So I started sketching some ideas out that it was kind of, we mentioned, like in the first set of conversations, it was like, we didn't want to go with figures, people with eyes, because I guess it was the scale thing. We didn't want anyone looking down on the people that were at the center. Can we go to the next slide, please? So I started thinking about images that I've seen in Los Angeles, things that a vocabulary that I've been playing with in my personal work, nail salons, painted signs that communicate beauty. So I was thinking about like picking flowers and flowers that would be in the community, and I kind of came up with this. And a lot of one of the things that interested me with the project was the finish would be in ceramic tile, and I use tile in my work already. So I felt like that was a connection that was strong for me. So I was thinking about tile and using images in tile. We can go to the next slide. Sorry, that's just like kind of an iteration of the first one with the tile and ceramic roses. You can go to the next slide. So I started thinking about these cakes that I started making, or I've started making back in 2013. I usually paint portraits of people that like people in America that have been kind of discounted and not celebrated. So I look at these as portraits, framed portraits, but more kind of like an inverse of something you might see at, in the president's kind of like, or in the White House, or like a National Portrait Gallery, collection with the black kind of dark background. Charles, like just very dramatic. This is kind of like the celebratory version. It's like really bright background, festive, and it reflects like bakeries in Los Angeles that make sheet cakes and birthday cakes that people get for birthdays. Sometimes they'll print the images, they're edible images, but of that person that's celebrating their birthday, and they put it on the cake. So I made this sketch of a quinceañera dress. Like I was thinking about like celebrating aspects of the community. You can go to the next slide. So in the cakes, I make each cake, they're not cakes, but they're just a panel, a wood panel. So if you could imagine a panel, I frost on the gesso with thick globs of gesso, just like I'm frosting a cake. And that's the primer for the wood. It seals the wood, and then I can kind of start painting. So in this case, the community wanted that idea of the celebratory, celebrating the area and kind of things in the area that are important to the community. So like I had this idea of a bouquet of flowers, and they had mentioned flowers that grow in their community and things, flowers that they see in their community. So I created a bouquet that included all those flowers. And that's what I'm starting to paint here. That was one of the cakes. I did two. The other one was a quinceañera dress, and that's something that they wanted to see. So in this cake was the bouquet. This is the sketch that I painted on the board after gessoing. You can go to the next slide. And then I drop in color, and I started painting the flowers and trying to arrange them. I actually bought a bouquet of flowers, and I was painting from that with all these flowers in there. And kind of like, you don't like certain things, you kind of have to design them because that it's going to be a mural. So you want it to be kind of laid out in an interesting way that, that doesn't really conflict with the whole overall design. You can go to the next slide. So I was thinking about this cellophane that I really see around Los Angeles, this green cellophane that kind of like, if you go to the cemetery and things like that, folks are selling flowers, and people selling flowers with this green cellophane. And I thought that was important because when I visit my mom in the cemetery and my family, I always, me and my partner always get those flowers, and it was always there. So it was kind of something I wanted to use in that. You can go to the next slide. So it's just a development. This is close to finish. I was just kind of painting details and color, getting color right. adding the bougainvillea, the marigolds were already there, and kind of working on the overall kind of positioning of all the flowers. You can go to the next slide. So this is kind of like a finished, I actually did the frosting like kind of a light violet. This picture feels a little dark, but the frosting was a little big, so I kind of scraped everything off and I hit start the frosting again. But the frosting is a thick acrylic heavy body, so it feels like frosting when you. I put it in a icing, like kind of you know what you would use to frost a cake, and I put the paint in there and I use it to kind of create the frosting concept and around the piece, so it frames the piece. But before that, I airbrush around the bouquet, and then there's this a golden plate that I kind of adhere to the panel so it sits on a plate, and it kind of works as a gold frame that you see on portraits and things like that, traditional portraits. And yeah, I do ceramic flowers on each end. Typically they're only on one, the top left, but this, in terms of a design of a mural, I had to think what it would look like from a distance and how, if it's big, design elements that would help make it read as a cake and then also as a design. So I was playing around with that. So this is kind of where I was playing with it. You can go to the next slide. These are the other elements. All of these are shot on my phone. I kind of tend to do progress, like, photos, just so I could look at them later. The painting on the left is the same kind of arrangement of flowers, but in a design that would sit. So in kind of in the midst of working this design out, or the mural out, I think I was supposed to do a whole kind of mural, and then it was kind of like a modular design after the talks. It was going to be 2 and then 1 column in the middle. So I had to make a design that would fit kind of a column design. So I came up with this marigold, rose, bougainvillea design that would just kind of like column up the middle of the mural. It was, if you've seen the mural, there's a photo at the end. But this is kind of the works in progress. On the right is the quinceañera dress cake. You can go to the next slide, please. That's it in progress. Airbrushed around it. The plate is on. I just had to do the frosting, and you could see the red roses that were kind of, I was playing with. They're just made out of, I hand make them out of ceramic and place them on the cakes. You can go to the next slide. And those are the two. I don't think the quinceañera dress cake is done, but the bouquet cake is done, and that's at my studio. And that's the finished mural. So working with the ceramic printing was a big challenge, because colors wouldn't translate and all that. But this was like like it was actually something I learned with making murals, was that for me, I didn't want the color to be that loud. It kind of was a good thing that they were kind of muted, and kind of printing on ceramic is, there's a firing, I guess, that goes on, and obviously it probably affects the color, and I like that about this piece. But also just the process of learning to print tile, I'm now using in my personal work, where I use the same person that prints on the tile, and I take the tile and use it in my paintings now. I'll make paintings and I'll print them on tile and then put them in my piece and break them and arrange them in certain ways. So I learned something from this project to kind of help me in my studio practice. I think that's the last slide.
Patrick and Eris, thank you so much for your incredible presentation, and thank you, Patrick, for taking the time to go over the exquisite detail that you undergo as you develop your art, and just appreciating you. These murals were very, very popular with our community groups, and just appreciating that you are so dedicated, right, to your craft. In the chat, there's a number of comments. I'd like you to be able to read, because a lot of for you and the work that you do. And I believe there might be a question in there too. If you can answer in the chat, we'd appreciate that.
Okay. Thank you.
Any questions for him? Anyone who hasn't had a chance to do a comment in the chat?
No questions, but just much appreciation. I think these images and the materials are very representative of Latino culture, and it brings a sense of joy when I see these images. So just much appreciation for bringing these images to us. So
yeah, this is I forgot to mention, this is my first public work. I'm from Los Angeles, so I understand kind of the history of the murals and things like that, people in the community creating murals for their community. And I understand how that kind of got weird at a certain point. So I just didn't want to become a part of like something where I was misrepresenting an area based on, just murals being painted more recently that are just kind of decorative and just, I don't know, occupying like development space and things like that. When Iris was talking to me about this, I felt like I could be of service because the community was involved also, and it was something that was overall just something we wanted to do to bring visual joy. So it wasn't anything like it was something I was very kind of committed to and interested in. So thank you for saying that.
Well, thank you for being dedicated, as I said, to your art and to your craft, and continue to share with us, please. We have a lot of interest in your work, and
thanks.
First public art. We so appreciate that we get to showcase your very first art in the restorative care village of our medical center. It brings a lot of joy to the residents of our halls, as well as to our community who can walk that space.
Yeah.
Congratulations, Patrick.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Health Innovation Partnership. Thank you for being here.
Yep. Thank you.
All right. So now we're going to move on to our next presentation. I am inviting Doug Cohen from LA County Department of Economic Opportunity, our brand new department, launched this summer. And he will be giving us an update on the General Hospital and West Campus Request for Proposal project update. And I will help him with that presentation because there is a role for the foundation in this next phase of the work.
Thank you, Rosa, and thank you everybody for letting us have a little bit of time here with you to give you an update on the RFP process. I think we're going to start just as a kind of reminder to some and to those who have not heard a little bit about our interaction on previous meetings. Go a little bit back here. We've got a slide presentation. I'll give you a little bit of an idea on what the RFP process is, and then obviously where we're at. But currently, and let's see, who's controlling the screen, Rosa?
We are at the foundation. Okay. Sophia's moving it forward. So all
okay.
You have next slide.
Not a problem. Sophia, you can go ahead and advance, please. There you go. Thank you. And so the RFP is essentially a document that is, and I'm oversimplifying all of this, so bear with me, but it's a document that is presented to a group of proposers that want to actually propose pricing for a contract. And so in this instance, the contract is a very significant contract. It's the development of 25.5 acres of the County of Los Angeles, the General Hospital reuse and West Campus. And the pricing that we're looking at from these proposers is based on a series of parameters that is, quite frankly, it's a complex arrangement of requirements and expectations that really set forth the scale, the scope, the expectations, and quite frankly, the positioning and how we prioritize all that goes into what we refer to as the project. And in formatting all of that, we would then have a presentation of that format that would then go out as a posting of a bid document. And that bid document, with all of that, with the correct prioritization of all of the elements that really describe what it is that the county is trying to achieve here, is expected to go out to what I refer to as the development community in late January. And so right now we're engaged in that process of identifying, what actually is it to prioritize, how to present it, how to package it, so that we get an organized, systematic, and quite frankly, very transparent response process that can be segmented in ways that we can provide one specific focus area, for instance, the community engagement piece. And so this is where we transition into not just going out to the developers to get an idea of how to build buildings and how much it's going to cost to build the buildings, but to actually transition into the selection process for that developer, actual developer, where they would be responding specifically to what is, correctly referenced as the community engagement piece. Backing up a little bit more, is the community engagement piece that we're talking about is the nearly 3.5 years of effort that many of you were part of, that was integral to the feasibility study that the county CEO department took on, and that was essentially to get an idea of various scenarios of how the 25.5 acres not only could be built, but how it could be built with respect to a reflection that was that really incorporated the priorities of the community. That community engagement was tied to that feasibility study, and the feasibility study actually ended in April when it was posted. So when that period of research concluded, the community engagement piece that was tied to it really didn't have, there wasn't a transition to anything at that time. There was, however, the transition from the feasibility study to the RFP that it began about 6 weeks earlier in late February, early March. And almost from the very beginning, what we were looking for was a way to provide some sort of continuity of operations to the community engagement piece. How do we bring the community engagement piece that was so much integral to the development of that feasibility study? How do we bring that into the selection process of the developer? And so again, when we talk about the RFP, what we're really talking about is the selection process for a developer. And we spent an awful lot of time, not the least of which, not just ponderings of how to do it, but also how to do it with respect to actually getting authority to do it from our county council, which is our legal counsel for the county. And we've got a structure for how to bring that community engagement piece into the selection process of the developer. So there's a series of steps that we're now involved in, that as we create the draft for the RFP, we're identifying areas where we can bring in that engagement piece. I think it would be good to go ahead and advance to the next slide. Thank you, Sophia. And so here we have a timeline that is, again, bear with me. This is, a presentation. There's an oversimplification to a lot of this, but this is nonetheless an accurate timeline for where we are right now. And in the month of September through the next few months, and this is September, October, November, December, but essentially what we're looking at is a release of this document, this bid document, this RFP in late January. And so in this period of 5 months, there's a tremendous amount of technical data that is being assembled. Now, it's important to understand we're not reinventing the wheel at this time. We're taking the technical data that the CEO has in place that, quite frankly, many of you were part of the group that was associated with the CEO's ongoing reports on what they were doing with that feasibility study. We're taking that feasibility study data right now and we're organizing it and prioritizing it in a way to present it to the development community in the bid package. It's a tremendous amount of data. And so when we talk about onboarding the technical data, we are not engaged right now in hiring consultants to go out and get some sort of peer review of the work that you're already possibly familiar with. We're taking that work and we're just prioritizing it for an appropriate and effective presentation to be bid on. Part of that is the community engagement that occurred. We want to be able to prioritize all of that, all the discussions that went in to the 3.5 years of that feasibility study. At the end of the day, what we're looking for is a document that the development community sees very clearly that there are really significant prioritizations that they need to respond to, because quite frankly, they're going to be assessed on how they respond to those priorities. And so when the RFP is released in January, and we can go ahead and advance to the next slide here. At that time, there's a period of 3 to 4 months, and we have May of 2023, where the proposals are due. And so in the months of February, March, April, and May, the bid document has been posted. It's the development community has seen it and is starting to put together their responses. Those responses are due in May. So we're giving them essentially 120 days to see the draft, or excuse me, to see the RFP bid document, and then to actually build a response upon which they would then be assessed. During that, what we refer to as posting period, there will be at least another opportunity. Oftentimes during a posting period, we have questions asked by the developer community, and it's in that period where they ask questions that we would then have another opportunity to, quite frankly, have a reinforcement of some of the prioritization of what we want the developers to respond to and how that we want them to respond. And it's in that posting period that we can also have yet another possibly site visit, what we refer to as industry days, where we truly could host the interested developers who are preparing their proposals. And we would obviously at that point be able to promote heavily the community engagement piece of the RFP. So it's, again, between January and May, we're still not in a go silent, quiet period of engagement. We can still be promoting that community engagement piece. Once the proposals are in, there's a period of review. This is going to be a very complex document. The proposals are going to be very complex. And remember, there's not just going to be one of them. If we do our job right, we're going to have several of them. And it's going to take, we're giving ourselves a full 8 weeks to actually go through that whole assessment process. At the end of the assessment process, obviously with the selection of a developer, the developer isn't actually selected by this process. What happens in this process is it ends with a recommendation based on, it's justified on the selection process, of the scoring process, where we go back to the board And with that justification in hand, we're making that recommendation of what we refer to as the selected developer. It's at that time that the board would then approve the selection process, the selected developer. The RFP process at that point ends, it concludes. What then begins is the actual development process with the selected developer. That's referred to as the ENA, the exclusive negotiating agreement. And that is when I think I want to make this this is a point of clarity. When a developer is selected, they don't actually have a development agreement. They get the development agreement after meeting a host of promises that they made that were the basis upon which they were selected. They're being selected and approved for an ENA process by the board in order to basically prove up the promises that they made upon which they were scored and selected. When those promises culminate in the entitlement by the County Department of Regional Planning and Public Works, and we have not just only entitlement, but also the permission to go ahead and go forth and build, it's because those promises, what we refer to as the best and final offer, have been proved up. In that period, there's going to be yet another very heavy and significant area of influence that the community engagement piece has. You have a community outreach component during this ENA process where the developer is working directly with the community. It's actually a direct relationship at that point. And what's essentially happening there is the community is in the community outreach piece, and this is not actually specific to this deal, but what's happens with this deal is because we've got the community engagement piece so well structured that we already know at this time what the community outreach component of the ENA process is going to look like. And you've got a very highly organized, highly structured community engagement piece that the developer is going to be able to tap into. They're going to know during the creation of their proposals that this community engagement piece is already structured and organized. And so they're going to know that during the creation of their proposals, that the community outreach piece is definitely going to be a significant working partnership. It's going to have to be, because again, the promises upon which they're selected, that best and final offer, are what is what they have to actually apply for, get approved for, to actually go forward to build. And so I think I can conclude this with the next slide. And this is a little bit of kind of who the stakeholders are in this. We're working very closely with Supervisor Solis's office. We're taking we just got a very much a direct working relationship with them. In addition to that, the foundation has been a significant help in the RFP process, basically in kind of like two different ways. They're providing us all the support that they've put in place with working with the CEO over this feasibility study, with the organization and the structure of this community engagement piece. As an outreach to that, they become somewhat of a contracting partner for consultants that are specific to the community engagement piece, building that into the RFP process. So we have our technical consultant, which is AECOM, and yet we've got our foundation, who's essentially our consultant on the community engagement piece. And as this triangle looks at it, you essentially see that there's, the base of the triangle is DEO, which is managing the RFP process. It would be very typical for DEO managing the RFP process to only have a single consultant here, which is the technical side, which we have, that's AECOM. But we also have the community engagement consultant piece. And it's it's being built into this whole process. So in conclusion, what we want to do is certainly identify the timeline associated with the RFP process, what the RFP process is, But I think it's also important to take a little bit of time out, as we just did, to give you insights as to how we're engaging the community engagement piece in this selection process. And I can basically, I think I can, that's the last slide. Is that right? Let's see.
Well, we do have slides today.
Yeah, Rosa's got some more here.
Yeah, we do have slides today that describe the function of each of the pieces of the pillars. So I'm not going to go into them in detail because we are a bit behind schedule, but I do want to make sure that there's an understanding of the role of the foundation. And thank you, Doug, for your trust and for eloquently describing how all of the different pieces will work. For us at the foundation, you know, we wouldn't be able to do any of our work if there wasn't the trust and commitment through the lens of the Health Innovation Community Partnership to do community engagement. So we will not do it alone. We're doing it with you. We're doing it with Health Innovation Community Partnership. And the bullets here that you see are kind of what's written now is the role of our engagement, which is to market and promote and engage stakeholders into the RFP process to align to funding priorities and to ensure that this project can be successful, to coordinate and support the project team so that everyone is communicating behind the scenes as well as through the public process, ensuring that we can engage our community through updates and presentations at this meeting every single month, host a community at-large meeting, which you saw on the calendar is already slated for the fall, presentations to local community stakeholder groups. We want to host industry days and campus site visits. We want people to know where it is that this investment will be, who it affects, how it impacts the quality of life, and we want them to fall in love with this project, with this building, with the possibility. And this is all before they even dive into the request for proposal. So it's really important for us that, you know, we do a good job, and the only way we do is if we do it hand in hand with all of you. So we'll continue conversations, we'll have work group meetings, and then there's the community advisory sub-panel. And as Doug said, this is brand new to the system. It's still under development, but it is a promise Doug made early on, and it's now written into our scope. So we will be coordinating the sub-panel. Let's go to the next slide. The role of AECOM is the next slide, and you did a wonderful job, Doug, of explaining what they will be doing and how they fit into this. So I won't spend more time on their role other than that technical contractor and partner. They were with us through the feasibility study. They will be with us through the request for proposal period to ensure that all of the elements that informed that feasibility study directly make it into the design and structure for the request for proposal. Next slide. And the function of the community advisory panel, just want to spend a minute on this. It's an integral part of the RFP process. It will serve as expert representation of our community needs surrounding the General Hospital campus. Through the Health Innovation Community Partnership, we will invite applications, and that will happen later. I think it's either later this month or early last month. I'm looking at I have to look back on the timeline. But please stay connected with us as we begin to release those opportunities. The sub-panel will be an intimate group. It will be intended to provide a review of the developer proposals related to community engagement so that there always is a real review of how the developer applicants interpret what they're seeing in the RFP and in the priorities with the community. It will also be a recommendation that the sub-panel result in a qualitative comparative assessment, and that it be different than what the technical team will be scoring. So more to come on this. Please stay connected with us and give us feedback via email or via the chat today. And again, just thank you everyone for your incredible commitment to ensuring that the future of our campus is not only inspired by all of you, but it is built with all of you. Let's go to the next slide. So wanted to, just ensure that, there's a real understanding among this group that your voices are heard, right? This is an equity table. This is something that is new, right, in terms of a county community partnership. And so we take very, very seriously every moment of dialogue with our community, including, as an example, the letter from Eastside Leads that was received in May of 2022. So we have all of the points present as things get developed. They will be evaluated against the recommendations here, and we hope to continue the dialogue through co-design, through leadership of Eastside Leads to ensure that we are addressing the issues here. The points that have been highlighted here, the strengthening of framework of community benefit and accountability, the ensuring that there are monthly progress reports and similar work groups to CESC through the feasibility study. Again, we're taking that very, very much to heart and ensuring that we're developing those pathways easily, and that the presentations here are comprehensive enough for the person who comes for the first time, as well as those of you who have been deeply involved. And then, just ensuring that, there is a guideline and dialogue as components of this are being developed. So just thank you everyone so very much. We will continue these updates on a monthly basis. Doug, thank you for your presentation today. Thank you to DEO, thank you to CEO. I know there's CEO leadership here, Callie Quinn and a few others. Thank you all for the investment in the feasibility study and in the commitment to community engagement. We hope to continue to build on the great success to date. So with that, I will conclude this presentation. We don't have time for questions live, but if you have questions in the chat, we will answer them in the chat. And otherwise, we can have just that last slide. You have Heather's and Sophia's emails if you want to talk directly with us about any component that you've seen today as we develop the phases of the project. And with that, I say thank you, and let's go on to the next presentation. So next we have a presentation in the category of community stability, and it is an update on the Enhanced Infrastructure Financing District. And I will start with Jose Gardea from Supervisor Solis's office. Jose, are you with us? I don't hear him. He might be on mute. I will look for him. But Felicia, are you with us? And Joseph from Cosmont Companies?
Yes, good morning. I believe my colleague Felicia might be kicking us off. Thank you.
Great. Can everybody hear me?
We can.
Perfect. So if we could go to the first slide. First of all, it's great to be back at HICP and seeing everybody this morning. So we just wanted to provide an update on the Enhanced Infrastructure Financing District study that Cosmont is working on. Next slide. So here's a quick table of contents, just the project background and overview of the work that Cosmont is doing with the First District and with SCAG, and the current status, next steps and timing, which will include a lot of community feedback that you'll see, some questions and answers. If we have time, we may do that in the chat. And then really importantly, we wanted to get some feedback on targeted improvements that the EIFD could fund in the area of LA County USC. So next slide. So just some background on the project. This is really a project supported by LA County Supervisorial District 1, Hilda Solis, and the Southern California Association of Governments, which does a lot of planning for this area. And it's to evaluate whether or not an enhanced infrastructure financing district is feasible in the area of LA County USC. Now, this tool provides the ability for the county and potentially the city, if they partner with the city, to finance public projects. So those are projects that are owned by the government and funded by the government, like streets, roads, open space, and including affordable housing, as we'll see on the next slide. And they are funded by an increase in property tax revenue that comes from new private development. And a lot of this is to promote affordable housing in the region so we can produce more of it. and then supportive infrastructure for the reuse of LA County USC General Hospital. So this is also focused on community benefits, as a lot of the other efforts we have done in this area have been. And we are really focusing on some of the projects that were identified through the very thorough outreach done by the General Hospital Reuse Feasibility Study. And importantly, these are not new taxes to local taxpayers, so it doesn't burden them. And it also allows money from new development property taxes to be reinvested in the area where that development is happening. So this is really sort of a key to anti-displacement by reinvesting in the area of LA County USC to help with the reuse of that facility. So next slide. So this is roughly how EIFDs work. So it's a funding tool for, again, public infrastructure, which includes affordable housing. So some of the other public infrastructure that you may be familiar with are streets and roads, parks, utilities, parking, and other public improvements, especially those that were identified in the feasibility study for General Hospital. And what this tool does is it uses a portion, not all, but a portion of local property tax revenues that are generated by new development that comes into the area. So it's not a new tax put onto that new development, but the new development itself creates an incremental increase in property tax revenues because of the value the property has increased. There's also potential for city-county partnerships. And we have just a graphic here to show how EIFDs work, where private property investment is made, that the increase in property tax revenues goes into a separate bank account, and then that's formed by the EIFD. And then those funds are used to pay for public improvements that benefit the area and the community. Next slide, please. And if we look statewide, there are quite a few of these districts that are in process. So some are under evaluation, like LA County USC. Some have gone into the formation stage, which includes a lot of public outreach before they can form the district. And then some of them are fully formed, which we'll go into a couple of case studies on the next slide. We go to the next slide of two that are fully formed. So one is the city of Laverne. You may be familiar with the county fairgrounds. A lot of this was done around the county fairgrounds to help public transportation, the new Gold Line station, or L Line station as it's called, that's going in there to access the fairgrounds, access University of Laverne, and then several jobs and housing projects that are proposed in the area. So that's really a transit-oriented development and transit access, EIFD. And then we have the other one that was formed by Los Angeles County, and that's in the West Carson area with Harbor UCLA, with the master plan there and a lot of the bioscience going in there. It's really to connect transit, create more housing opportunities for the jobs that will be created in the biotech industry down at Harbor UCLA. So with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to my colleague, Joe Dieguez, who can go through the process for this EIFD.
Thank you. To reiterate the main focus of this, the point is looking at this mechanism as a tool to fund affordable housing and public infrastructure. This is intended largely by the Supervisorial District 1 office as an anti-displacement sort of insurance policy, how to deliver public benefit out of the reuse of the General Hospital. The goal of our study specifically is to provide information to the decision makers at the county level, ideally also the city level, if the city is a partner, which is the goal. And what we're specifically doing is evaluating different ways the boundary this EIFD can have, how much funding could be generated to actually fund the targeted affordable housing and infrastructure improvements. Very importantly, is to actually identify what those projects are that can be funded. And that is really the focus of conversations like these and other stakeholder input. Beyond that activity, our job for the county and SCAG is also to seek out partners, other public agencies like the city, but also nonprofits or private sector partners that can help accomplish the goal. And then ultimately, if the community is in support of this tool, part of our contract is also to actually do this, to actually form the district and set this mechanism in place to deliver on those community benefits. Next slide, please. So when we say the community priorities, we are being exactly consistent with the feedback from the reuse feasibility study outreach. So we keep using words affordable housing and infrastructure. What are we talking about? Specifically those things that were identified in the reuse feasibility study outreach. Infrastructure to support the actual reuse of the hospital, things like water, sewer, power utilities, earthquake, seismic retrofits, affordable housing with a target at the deeply affordable level, and the infrastructure to specifically help that housing. And others of these, efficient with our time, I won't go through all of them, but hopefully they sound familiar. Arts and culture, health and social services, facilities to do those things, library, childcare centers, parking, transit connectivity to get it safely to bus and rail, broadband, internet, technology improvements. Those are all those things that we are maintaining to be exactly consistent with the previous feedback. And we still want to hear more, want to confirm these are still the priorities, or no, if we're missing something, perhaps based on new information. So that's what we mean when we say infrastructure and affordable housing. Next slide, please. It's all this is extremely technical subject matter. This is a field that our company specializes in. We thought it might help and really a lot with the feedback of the HICP EIFD subcommittee. We tried to put a framework together on this page that tries to address how all these pieces fit together. And so EIFD is part of a sort of a larger universe of how the general hospital reuse is actually going to get paid for. And so within that framework, there are sort of two main bubbles. One is what the private and nonprofit sectors are going to fund. And those are things like market rate development, commercial development, their own share. They will also be contributing to things like affordable housing and infrastructure. But the tool that we're talking about, EIFD, really falls completely in the public sector realm, among the public sector sources of funding and financing with a specific target of affordable housing and infrastructure. And so to be very clear, the EIFD tool, the green bubble, the law says it can only fund affordable housing and public infrastructure. It couldn't fund, market rate development or commercial development, even if it wanted to. The law says it cannot do that. It can only fund affordable housing and public infrastructure. And so that's why the county team in applying for that SCAG grant was focused on this tool. Very importantly, we gave a list of projects that were previously identified. In order for this tool to actually be implemented, it's meant to be put in a document that sort of makes it official. It's not just a list that we're showing on a PowerPoint slide. There is an actual document that gets written, an infrastructure financing plan. That's the rule book that the district is going to have to follow over time as the dollars come in. And that's where this list of projects informed by the community outreach ends up being made official. It's going to be the rule book, the business plan that we have to follow. And that plan, as Felicia mentioned, it has its own separate set of public meetings and hearings. We're all here in this feasibility stage. Beyond this feasibility stage, if it moves forward, the implementation phase has a whole separate set of public meetings and hearings that this plan, this infrastructure financing plan, it gets presented and mailed out and posted in the newspaper and put on a website and presented so everyone gets a chance to see what are we really talking about here. Next slide, please. So the boundary, the study area, very importantly, the main focus is, of course, the medical center campus area, LAC, USC, but we're also including some other areas immediately around it. I'll talk about why in a moment, but generally speaking, this is a study area of about 365 acres. In today's assessed property value, it's about 1.3 billion. And on the next slide, please, I want to talk about why we're looking beyond just the campus. The idea is not just to rely on the reuse area to generate all the revenue, because that would place what we would call sort of market and financial.
Has the chat been turned off? I'm logged back on.
That would play, if we were just focused on the campus area, that would place market pressure to put market rate development on the site, because that would generate more taxable value for this tool. And that's the opposite of what we're trying to do with this tool. We're actually trying to create, affordable and deeply affordable uses. So for that reason, we're sort of expanding a bit outside of the campus area to benefit from some of the value growth in adjacent areas, and sort of relieving some of that pressure and making it more feasible to produce some of those affordable and deeply affordable uses on the actual hospital site and campus area. So that's the mentality of going a little bit larger than just the campus, and we want it to be very clear about that. Next slide, please. So this is just another step in the outreach process. We continue to greatly appreciate the sort of the partnership with HICP and the audience that we have with this group. It will not be the last time. So we have more public workshops and community meetings coming. And this is all, again, just in this feasibility study stage. And then beyond that, in 2023, there would, again, if community is supportive, further meetings and hearings with even more and more specificity about what exactly you're going to pay for, how much, over what time. So our goal is to maintain contact. Next slide, please. And that's where we're at right now. We'd like to hear feedback. We'll do sort of a poll in a moment on the targeted projects. Continue this study, this feasibility stage to the end of the year. Again, if there's local support, actually begin implementation, hopefully complete implementation, forming this district to set this baseline in the next calendar year, 2023. So that is the goal. My last slide on the next slide is a specific invitation to please come stay in touch with us. Our next community meeting, Thursday, September 22nd. Please come see us at the Boyle Heights City Hall Community Room in the evening, 6 to 8. Have a conversation a bit like this, a combination of education on what we're talking about, making sure folks know what this is, what it's not, and what they can provide input on, potential projects to be funded by this tool. This is the almost final draft on this slide. I apologize. We've made some minor revisions with great help from the HICP EIFE subcommittee, and that will be distributed broadly via email and otherwise. This is just a snapshot so that you know it's coming. And again, thank you to this group. What we'd like to do is take general questions, and if there is time, we have a bit of a poll that we'd like to conduct. We'd like to continue to get feedback on the list of potential projects to be funded. And so Rosa, we can either go straight to that or have general questions first and then do that. We'd like to be respectful of the group's schedule. We know it's getting a bit late.
Well, we did a great job of doing a little bit of catch up. So I was sharing in the chat that we could take questions. So why don't we do that? If you'd like, if the poll, if you'd like to get more folks in the poll, we could do the poll now because people tend to drop off the last few minutes of the meeting. Otherwise, we can do Q&A and then so flexible, whatever you guys want to do.
Okay, we want to get the feedback, please. So we want to get the feedback and then we'll stay on the chat for questions because we want to get those as well. I actually don't know if the Zoom poll has been loaded on the HICP account. So I'd like to ask that question. And if it's not, we have a backup, but perhaps a question to Sophia. Do we have a Zoom poll available with our list of targeted improvements?
I do see that the slide is here, but unfortunately the poll was not able to transfer over. And so if you do have a link, that would be fantastic.
What we'd like to do, if it's okay, we could advance the slides to that slide. What we would love for folks to do, those who are interested, and we hope many of you are on the following page, we'd love for you to at least put into the chat the top 3 of these 10 types of improvements. These came from the reuse feasibility study, summary of outreach. So we'd like to use this as our start. We always do. We're asking folks to identify their top 3 priorities of the types of improvements, community benefits that are needed most in this area. So we're offering to please do that just by listing in the chat, 1, 4, 9, whichever your top 3 are. But very importantly, if you're not seeing the ones that you feel are most needed, most representative of your input, we'd ask you to actually write that in. Please do type that in, and we will request this transcript from Rosa and the team so that we can tally on our own time. So please go ahead and do that, and obviously chime in on the chat with other questions as well, and we'll be addressing all of it. Last thing I'll just say is thank you so much to the HICP team and other members of the community who've joined us. We've really appreciated your feedback so far, and we hope to continue to hear from you.
Excellent. While everyone is typing into the chat your priorities for this project, we would like to take any questions anyone has. And again, the questions could be from this presentation or from the RFP process.
Hi, this is Ari. Oh, go ahead, Edwin.
Well, go ahead, you first.
Oh, I was just wanting to go back to that the circles that you showed us about the affordable housing priority for this tool, as you call it. I was just a little more concerned about the other side in terms of the market rate housing and how that could go haywire. Is there any way to inform that? Is this part of it? Is that going to happen no matter what? You know, is there an input around that?
Thank you, Ari. I'll take the first shot, and then I'll invite my colleagues to weigh in. So they're really separate. This EIFD tool, it really has no say in what the other circle, the private sector improvements, can look like. You know, it's not a land use tool. It's not even a you know, sort of deed restriction or anything like that. This is, so the short answer is no. It really has no effect. It's just meant to be a vehicle to benefit as much as possible from whatever happens in terms of private sector investment. It's just a mechanism that gets put in place to take advantage of whatever that is as a mechanism to deliver public benefit from that. But it doesn't really have a direct influence on what that other side looks like.
Thank you. Edward?
My question was kind of similar. I think I'm asking for a little clarification. So the EIFD proposal is to replace the 2% that's already required of new developments. And instead of making it just for regular community, it would be a more focused approach towards housing. Is that what I'm understanding?
Oh,
is that a different bucket that we're talking about?
It is, yeah, it is a bit different. This one is, no matter what happens in the area, the people who build and own whatever new development, you know, they're gonna just have to pay property tax, like anyone who owns a building has to pay property tax. What this mechanism does is it just changes what happens with that property tax that they're gonna have to pay anyway. What this tool just says is we're gonna set up a special account and we're gonna send some of the money that comes from that property tax into the special account and reserve it for a specific set of uses that are in alignment with what this community has prioritized for public benefit. That's really the way the dollars flow. I hope that clarifies.
Thank you for that clarification. If you see a question in the chat that has not been addressed, If anyone on our team would like to flag it, that'd be great. I'm trying to scroll through as quickly as I can. But we will be putting the emails in the chat, for at least Heather's email for the RFP is heather@thewellnesscenterla.org. And Francisco Sanchez is asking, how can one apply to be part of the advisory committee for the RFP process? Doug, are you on? Do you want to go? Do you want me to go?
Doug just signed off.
We just lost him. Okay, so we will be developing an application, and it will be on the Health Innovation Community Partnership website. It will also be offered here, and it will be sent out as part of the newsletter. So you can apply, via the site and the link, and we will be, collecting the applications for. I believe they said they'll give us 2 to 3 weeks before they close the application process. And Ben, thank you for answering some of the questions on the chat. I don't know if there's any other thoughts you have before we close, or anyone from SD1.
Thank you. No big comments. I think both of these initiatives that SD1 are intimately involved in, the EIFD and the RFP, are incredible projects that really work in tandem to really move the the affordable housing and other projects along. So we're excited to hear what you want, and how the community responds. That's really helpful to us. So a big thank you to all the folks who are commenting in the chat. Thank you, Rosa.
Thank you so much, Ben, and thank you to Supervisor Solis for her incredible leadership, ensuring that the priorities of LAC-USC Medical Center and our surrounding communities are always at the forefront of her agenda. Thank you, and thank you to the County of Los Angeles and the Board of Supervisors. So,
Rosa?
Yes.
Also, I just wanted to add to what Ben mentioned too, is that also in speaking about the RFP process and the community engagement that's taking place, it's going to be taking place furthermore. We also see the role of the community assisting in this period with advocacy, right? There's a lot of continuous advocacy at our state and federal legislative levels for funding that the supervisor continues to move forward with. Again, always thinking of how do we attract resources to make the most community serving of our LAC-USC. And so that is an additional way that our community partners can definitely help us. And looking forward to a lot of great work.
Thank you so much, Guadalupe. I think, I was thinking about, one of the ways that we can ensure that we give proper time, particularly to the processes that have the component of community feedback. And I'm wondering whether membership would agree that maybe what we do is we try to switch the order of presentations so that, for example, the last 2 presentations, if they, let's say they both will be on the agenda for the next meeting, might be recommended for top of the agenda slots so that we give them enough time, don't rush through them. And then again, I will continue to work with presenters and our team to ensure that we keep presentations on time, because I know the co-design works really, really hard to get the agenda, tight enough so that we get to everything that is on our agendas every month. But, you know, sometimes there are those challenges, right, that make us go a little longer. So I'm wondering if this is one solution. Co-design, what do you guys think? Roberto, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know who's on the co-design team. So, but if you ask him, you know, for ideas, I like the idea of only creating a space for folks where there's an expectation of generating feedback, right, on those presentations. There are many presentations that are more updates, and those can be sent ahead of time, you know, via PowerPoint, and only to create a space to, if people have any questions around that specific update. But I think those where we are, it is, you know, an expectation of engage as the, you know, the group and generate feedback. I think allocating some more time for those will be helpful, those items.
That is a great thought. We will take that note and ensure that we can address this challenge and opportunity. All right, any other comments? All right, team, I feel like we have gotten to goal. It is 10:46, so thank you everyone for logging on, appreciating your time, your energy, your wisdom, and we will continue to push forth every month for the Health Innovation Community Partnership. There is one special person on the call today that I wanted to uplift and make sure that we know, just that she knows how appreciative we are of her. And I am talking about Ana Parra. Where are you, Ana? There you are. Ana has left the foundation. She's on to a different job. And I see she's still making time for us. So appreciating you for that, but also appreciating you for your 4 years of commitment to the foundation, to our wellness center. And, you know, again, wishing you the very best of luck in your new endeavor, and just appreciating you and thanking you for all of the support you gave Health Innovation Community Partnership in our early years. Thank you so much, Ana.
It was a pleasure and an honor to support the fantastic work that's being done through the foundation and through the Wellness Center, and supporting the medical center and the community at large. So it was my honor, and I look forward to continue to do so. I will remain an active participant in the HICP for sure.
Thank you so much. All right, so with that, we say goodbye to everyone, and we'll see you next month. Thank you, everyone. Have a beautiful day.